At 2:06 a.m., the pounding on the door erupted, echoing through the silent house. I jolted up, my heart racing wildly. Who would come at this hour? A series of terrible scenarios flashed through my mind. 36 years in the police force taught me to stay calm, so I quietly reached for the gun in the drawer. Step by step, I moved toward the door and looked through the peephole. Under the porch light, my daughter's face came into view. Her eyes were red, mascara smeared, her whole body trembling. Her hand kept banging against the door, faster and harder, as if to tear it down. I turned the lock quickly and flung the door open. Natalie. Before we continue, don't forget to hit like, subscribe to the channel, and leave your thoughts in the comments, because what's about to unfold will surely surprise you. She hurled herself into my arms, ragged breaths tangled with the cheap perfume still clinging to her coat. The scent I knew did not belong to her, but to Travis Monroe, the husband I had never trusted from day one. Natalie, I choked out. Bruises showed on her wrist. A blade plunged straight into my heart. He was not only a liar, he was a batterer. Come inside, I whispered, guiding her into the living room. Her handbag fell onto the rug, papers scattering everywhere. Among them, I recognized loan contracts with Natalie's familiar, trembling signature. She broke down, her voice shattered. Travis is gone, Mom. He took everything, money, the accounts, even the house. Before he left a note, saying he'd found someone who understands him better. He called me an idiot right in front of Vanessa Collins. Natalie clutched my hand as if letting go would make her evaporate. Between sobs, she choked. When he locked the door, he laughed as if I were just a joke. I held her tight, but in my mind was the cold focus of someone who had watched hundreds of victims collapse in a precinct interview room. Natalie's eyes, now red, wrecked, were the same eyes I knew too well. The look of someone realizing she was only prey in a cruel game. She flung the scratched wedding ring onto the table, her voice tightening with bitterness. The cheapest thing in this marriage was this ring, Mom. I said nothing. I simply stood, opened the wardrobe, and pulled out the uniform navy shirt, matching trousers, polished black shoes, and the steel badge. Not because I still had a shift, but because I needed to remind myself, and my daughter, this isn't just a family matter, this is crime. When I turned back, Natalie stared, startled. Mom, why? I didn't explain. I just lifted the phone and dialed a familiar number. David, this is Evelyn Carter. Activate the plan. Right now, I'll send additional materials in a bit. Hanging up, I sat beside my child and took her icy hands. Natalie, listen to me. What Travis did isn't just betrayal. He committed crimes, fraud, identity theft, embezzlement. And I've been prepared for this day for a long time. Natalie went still, looking at me. Mom, you knew? I shook my head slightly, my voice low but firm. I suspected. He's exactly like the predators I've seen in interrogation rooms, so I prepared the trap. I pointed to the papers on the floor, then looked straight into her eyes. Tonight, you lost him, but starting tomorrow, we take ourselves back. The clock in the living room knocked out a dry beat. 2:20 a.m., and the game had just begun. I opened the laptop. The cold blue light washed my face as if I were back in an interrogation room. In a backup inbox, there had been only one draft waiting across 36 years. The subject line was bold, unyielding. If I call after midnight, I hit send. 2:26 a.m. A 48-hour timer began its countdown. Natalie sat up on the chair, wiping her swollen eyes. Her breathing still shook, but her hands were clenched. I swung the whiteboard out from the corner and drew 3 big columns. Me, David, Natalie. We don't wait for dawn, I said, voice even as a command. We start now. Me, contact the bank to place a temporary alert. Prepare a full file to send to the prosecutor in the morning. David, receive the data packet overnight. At first light, work with the judge to request preservation orders and notify TSA. Natalie, change all passwords. List joint assets. Write a timeline of every transaction he took. Natalie nodded, her voice still shaky but resolute. I understand. I'll do it. I picked up the landline and called the 24/7 internal line at First National. This is Evelyn Carter, former employee ID 4367. I need to place an emergency alert. Suspected money laundering and illegal transfers. Subject: Travis Monroe. Please begin immediate monitoring. Silence for a few seconds on the other end, then the quick volley of keystrokes. A woman's voice replied, "Flag applied. But a formal freeze requires court approval. David will file for it within hours," I said, and hung up. I immediately sent an encrypted data packet to David. Not 2 minutes later, the phone buzzed. "Got it." His voice was low and steady. "I'll see the judge at dawn. Let Agent Daniel Ross from the FBI, who's coordinating with TSA, know to be cautious." "Copy," I answered, ending the call. Meanwhile, Natalie kept combing through records. She stopped when she saw a withdrawal on her birthday. Her voice cracked. Of course he always chose the most important days to slap me in the face. I set a hot coffee in front of her, my tone decisive. "Log everything with timestamps, no emotion, no commentary, just facts. Do you understand?" Natalie looked up. Her eyes were still wet, but a glint of steel had appeared. She nodded, and the hand holding the pen grew steadier. The hands of the clock kept moving. The countdown ticked on, second by second, and we knew the game had truly begun. I opened the bottom drawer and pulled out the black cardboard box that had lain still for 4 years. I called it by 3 letters. TM. Casebox. Not only shorthand for Travis Monroe, but also like a curse hanging over this house. Placing the box on the wooden table, the heavy thud echoed like an indictment that needed no reading. Natalie sat beside me, trembling between fear and rage. She realized. The mother she thought had buried her law enforcement career still kept her tools and was ready to use them again. I snapped off the rubber band, lifted the lid. Layer after layer of yellowed documents emerged, stacked like pieces of a grotesque puzzle. I spread them across the table. In 3 photos of Travis at different charity events, one detail never changed: the same silver watch on his wrist. I glanced, then said coldly, "Just a prop." He pawned it for cash, then bought it back, wearing it again to keep up the polished illusion of a gentleman. Private background check. 2 previous marriages, both ending in credit debt and second mortgages. I stuck on a red note. Repeat pattern. Bank statements. Large withdrawals, timed exactly on anniversaries and Natalie's birthday. He turned every important day into an insult. A screenshot. One-way ticket search to Grand Cayman. Natalie hissed. He really planned to vanish. Rental contract for a mini storage unit under another person's name, but with Travis's handwriting clear. Service invoice for a safety deposit box in another state. Silver USB. Video of Travis bragging about profits at a drunken party. His voice slurred but smug. Enlarged wedding photo. Behind Travis, Vanessa Collins staring at him with unmistakable eyes. Natalie froze. Betrayal. Since that very day. Natalie gripped the table edge, sobbing. "I used to defend him. I turned myself into a lawyer for the man who destroyed me." I placed my hand on her shoulder. "No, you just loved the wrong man. He's the one who weaponized love and converted it into a bank account." I pinned more evidence onto the whiteboard. Flowchart of money. Bank cryptocurrency Suncrest Holdings, LLC, back to cash. Map of 3 states, Phoenix, Denver, Miami, places he once worked. Life insurance policy in Natalie's name with chillingly vague clauses. Natalie sprang up, gasping. He didn't just want money. He wanted my life. I slammed my pen onto the board, scrawling in large letters. Charges: grand theft, forgery, wire fraud, coercive control. Natalie shook, but her hand gripped the pen and began writing her first statement. Every line seemed to bleed out of her heart, transforming her from victim to witness. I shut the box, the white glare catching in my eyes. 4 years of suspicion. Now is the time to unlock it. In the morning, my daughter and I arrived at Whitaker and Associates. The cold stone hallway echoed with footsteps, resembling the entrance to a command center more than a law firm. Fluorescent lights cast pale beams on the walls, dragging shadows of Natalie, and the black TM case box, as long as the shadows of those who carry justice to collect debts. David Whitaker emerged from the conference room, tall, nearly 6'4", silver-haired, sharp-eyed. Before becoming an attorney, he had spent 15 years in the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit, and that night, that aura returned intact. "Evelyn," he nodded, then turned to Natalie. "Miss Natalie Carter, I regret that our first meeting again is under such heavy circumstances." Natalie clutched Richard's old scarf and whispered, "No, I will reclaim the Carter name. No more Monroe." That sentence cut her old identity right there and then. David opened his laptop, the large screen flaring alive, displaying tangled transaction streams like poisoned veins. Beside him, Lauren, the financial forensic expert with brown hair and thin glasses, nodded. "Smells like dirty money." David flipped through the legal binder, his voice firm. In the last 72 hours, $265,000 drained from the joint account, routed through an intermediary bank, then wired straight to Grand Cayman. On top of that, he took out another $130,000 from a second mortgage on your house. Natalie snapped her head up. "No way, I never signed anything." David pushed the contract across. The signature read, "Natalie Carter, Monroe." Familiar but missing her signature flourish. Her fingers shook as she pointed. "This is forgery. I always add a curl. He signed while I was asleep." I growled. "Add the charge, forgery." Lauren tapped the keyboard. Metadata shows the e-signature timestamp at 3:14 a.m. He did it that very night. The air grew dense. David dialed the on-call judge, requesting a temporary freeze order on all First National accounts under Travis Monroe's name. Minutes later, the fax machine screeched, a red seal stamped down. David held it up, voice resolute. "It's done. The $92,000 transaction this morning has just been blocked." Natalie covered her face, tears spilling but without sobs. I placed a hand on her back, whispering, "You don't beg for justice, you activate it." David handed Natalie the criminal complaint. "From the moment you sign, he's a defendant, and you're the plaintiff." Natalie grasped the pen. Her hand trembled, but the ink flowed steady. A clear line was drawn, from victim to accuser. David concluded, his tone like a judge's gavel. "Tomorrow, on the dot. We don't need heroes, just precision." On the whiteboard, a diagram labeled Vice Grip appeared. Bank Suncrest Holdings LLC Mini Storage, Grand Cayman. Every link was marked in red. Natalie inhaled deeply. "We will make him pay." I corrected her, eyes steady. "No, the court will make him pay. Our job is only to lay the bricks for the case, and now we move for an emergency arrest warrant." At dawn, the skylight of the airport flooded with cold light, spilling onto the crowd of passengers. Suitcases rumbled, the loudspeakers echoed, but to me, this was only a stage, and the lead actor was about to appear. David stood at the center, earpiece connected to the tactical team. Two officers, Mark and Anthony, blended into the crowd. On the outer perimeter, Daniel from the FBI held command, his deep voice steady over the encrypted channel. "Target check-in 10:30, gate D17, flagged and ready." Natalie sat further away. On the tablet screen, the updates blinked. "Flight Grand Cayman, gate D17, transit Florida." A trip already locked. Then he appeared. Travis Monroe, gray hoodie, cap pulled low, eyes darting. He dropped his bag onto the conveyor, removed his shoes, stepped into the metal detector. For other passengers, it was just procedure. For him, it was the ritual of removing armor before being stripped of freedom. David murmured, "Wait until he clears the scanner. Now." The triangle closed in, TSA in front, Mark pressing from the left, Anthony from the right. Daniel's voice thundered like a gavel. "Travis Monroe, you are under arrest under federal warrant for fraud, grand theft, signature forgery, and identity theft." Travis froze, eyes darting. His usual slickness vanished, leaving raw panic. He turned, saw Natalie, his voice trembling. "I just panicked. I love you." Natalie rose, her tone sharp as steel. "No, you only loved money, Travis." He clenched his teeth at me. You never liked me. I met his glare, my voice cold. I don't hate anyone. I hate crime. And you are crime. Mark snapped on the cuffs. The metallic clack rang out, closing the illusion of freedom. From his bag came the evidence. A fake passport under the name Jonathan Pierce, 3 loose SIM cards, a watch hiding a micro SD, and $9,800 cash just under the reporting threshold, but far from escaping experts' eyes. Lauren sealed the evidence, her voice flat. Your money just lost its mask. Natalie stepped forward, her eyes blazing. Your freedom ends here. A child in the line asked his mother, what did that man do wrong? I answered loudly enough for all to hear, theft. And justice doesn't call it anything else. Travis hissed, you won't keep me for long. I whispered, each word deliberate. Keeping your money is enough. As he was escorted away, phones captured it all. Images of Travis Monroe in handcuffs would spread everywhere, public outrage igniting. Natalie glanced at the departure board. The words boarding delayed flashed beside the flight to Grand Cayman. She nodded, her voice resolute. He leaves alone just as he always lived. I replied, my eyes fixed on the handcuffs, glinting under the lights. And we will never walk alone. That night, after a long day at the precinct, neither of us could sleep. Natalie lay sprawled on the sofa, eyes wide in the dark, while I sat at the kitchen table, combing through every detail of the file. Arrest was only the first step. The true battle would be in court. At 5:30 a.m., I handed my daughter a cup of coffee. She looked up, her face gaunt but her eyes clearer. Are we really free of him now, Mom? Natalie asked, her voice trembling. I shook my head calmly. No, sweetheart. He's only been stopped. Now is the time for justice to be named, and we must be ready. David arrived at 7:20 a.m., carrying a stack of files reprinted from the frozen bank data. He set them on the table, his tone decisive. The defense will claim this is just a marital property dispute, but we'll prove it's theft, it's fraud, it's coercive control. Natalie, you have to stand up. Your voice is the key. Natalie clutched her father's scarf, her breath uneven. Mom, I'm afraid. I'm not strong enough. I laid my hand on her shoulder, my voice unwavering. You're not standing alone. Every data point, every timeline, every testimony is a brick, and we are building a wall. Justice will lean on it. Lauren, the forensic financial expert, joined via video call. She flipped through spreadsheets, highlighting withdrawal patterns. Every anniversary, every birthday, every holiday. This is the textbook sign of coercive control, she said. He used meaningful days to scar them. I'll write an affidavit to explain this to the court. Natalie went quiet, tears sliding down her face. He always chose the days meant to bring joy and turned them into humiliation. David nodded, voice low. In 3 days, the jury won't just hear numbers. They'll hear the cost you've paid, and that's what will break the defense. I pulled the file closer, marking each section with colored tabs. In red pen across the cover page, I wrote boldly, this is theft, not asset management. Natalie stared at the line for a long moment, then lifted her head. Her voice trembled but rang clear. I will say that before the court. That afternoon, we gathered at Whitaker and Associates. On the big screen, digital files from TSA and the FBI had just come in, showing Travis Monroe under the alias Jonathan Pierce. Lauren, the financial forensic expert, pushed up her glasses, her tone even. Not just one name. Pierce has opened 3 shell companies in the past 4 years. Registered addresses in Delaware, Nevada, and even Panama. David tapped his pen on the table, his eyes like ice. 3 companies, 3 marriages. All ended with the same script. The wife financially drained, the assets gone, and him disappearing. Natalie stiffened, her lips trembling. So I was just another name in his chain of victims? I turned to her, my voice steady and firm. No, you're the end of the chain. Because this time, he picked the wrong woman. Lauren pulled up additional data. 2 women's faces appeared on the screen, Cheryl Anderson and Linda Matthews. Cheryl went bankrupt in 2015 after marrying him under the alias Eric Dalton. Linda lost her house in 2018 after living with him as Ryan Whitmore. Natalie gasped, tears spilling over. He ruined life after life, and still managed to smile? David answered, "That's the nature of a predator. This isn't coincidence. This is a pattern." I pinned more sheets onto the whiteboard, expanding the TM case box, piece by piece. The picture sharpened. Travis Monroe, or Jonathan Pierce, was not just a bad husband. He was a serial fraudster, a systematic predator. Natalie choked on her words. I thought I was stupid, weak, but I was only prey in a script he had already written. I looked into her eyes. And today, when you testify, you're no longer prey. You're a witness, and you will be the final strike. David concluded, his tone like the hammer of the court. I'll petition the federal court to consolidate the cases across 3 states. If we prove the pattern, his sentence won't be in years, it will be in decades. Natalie inhaled deeply, wiping her tears. For the first time, a flash of steel burned in her eyes. I'll do it. Not just for myself, but for Cheryl, for Linda, and for anyone else he planned to target. Lauren gave a fleeting smile, half bitter, half proud. He never imagined his final victim would be the one to collapse his whole empire of lies. Outside the window, the morning sun broke through. Natalie rose, her voice clear. This time, he has no escape. 3 days later, the trial opened. The county courtroom was packed. From the high ceiling, the massive chandelier poured cold white light over the heavy wooden benches, illuminating every tense face. In the back rows, the public whispered. Reporters raised cameras ready. The atmosphere was thick, like a bomb sealed in a box waiting for a spark. Travis Monroe was brought in, wrists cuffed, orange jumpsuit glaring like a stain against the solemn backdrop. Yet he still forced a half smile, like a man who thought he could bend the law with familiar tricks. Natalie sat beside me, shoulders straight, though her hands were clenched. Each time Travis glanced her way, she answered only with a frozen stare, no more tears, only steel. The judge struck the gavel. This court convenes to try the defendant, Travis Monroe, on charges of grand theft, forgery, wire fraud, and coercive control. Prosecution, you may proceed. The young prosecutor stood. Your Honor, this is not a family dispute. This is a calculated pattern of serial fraud, spanning years, states, and victims. The evidence proves Travis Monroe is a systemic financial predator. The defense attorney leapt up. Your Honor, this is merely marital conflict. The judge cut him off with a raised hand. This is not divorce court. This is criminal. Proceed. Natalie leaned close and whispered in my ear. I'm ready. Across the aisle, Travis folded his arms, still smirking, but the chandelier's harsh light betrayed the sweat streaking his temple. Judge William Harper struck the gavel, his deep voice echoing across the courtroom. The next witness, Miss Natalie Carter, please take the stand. The room fell silent, sharp as a blade. Natalie slowly rose. The creak of the wooden bench followed her steps, and every eye fixed on her. She drew a long breath and walked forward. Each heel striking the floor was a drumbeat, announcing an irreversible truth. The clerk held out the Bible. Natalie placed her hand upon it, her voice quiet but clear. I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. She lifted her head, gaze unwavering. Her voice, hoarse but firm, rang out. My name is Natalie Carter. I no longer carry the name Monroe. She looked directly at Travis. His eyes flickered rapidly arrogance. For the first time, gone. Natalie inhaled, then spoke. For 4 years, I lived in a cage. Travis controlled my accounts, my phone, even the days that should have been celebrations. My birthday, our anniversary, each one aligned with another withdrawal. Every smile of his came with another debt. I thought it was love, but it was hunting. She held up photocopies, the forged mortgage contract with her falsified signature. This isn't mine. He signed it while I was asleep. He turned me into a vessel to drain. Murmurs rippled across the courtroom. Travis bit his lip, anger flashing in his eyes. But Natalie did not falter. She continued. The night he disappeared, he called me stupid, said he had found someone who understood him better. I thought I had lost everything. But in truth, I found myself again, and I am not afraid anymore. She turned to the jury, her voice like a bell. I do not stand here only for myself. I stand for Cheryl Anderson, for Linda Matthews, and for every woman left in debt and tears by him. Justice cannot give us back the years we lost, but justice can stop him from destroying any more lives. A moment of absolute stillness. Then the scribbling of pens filled the air. The prosecutor nodded, his tone firm. Your Honor, the witness has made it clear, this was no love. This was deliberate, systematic exploitation, with consecutive victims. As Natalie stepped down from the stand, she passed Travis. She leaned close enough for only him to hear. You no longer have the right to call me your wife. Travis clenched his jaw, but the cold cuffs reminded him that power had shifted hands. Natalie returned to her seat, her eyes glowing with something new. For the first time, true freedom. The courtroom air thickened as both sides unleashed their full arsenal. The prosecutor projected transaction charts, each line blazing like a map of crime. Withdrawals, wire transfers, flight tickets, shell companies. Her voice rang out, relentless, leaving no space for sympathy. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, these are not random mistakes. This is a deliberate pattern. A man who uses love as bait, then uses law to bind his victims. The result? Assets gone, dignity destroyed, victims bearing the cost. Across the aisle, the defense attorney shot up, slamming his file. Your Honor, my client was simply protecting marital assets when he saw his wife spending recklessly. Withdrawals matching anniversaries? Those were gifts. Wedding gifts, birthday gifts. To call them fraud is malicious distortion. Natalie shivered, but I squeezed her hand, whispering, truth is stronger than defense. The prosecutor did not flinch. What kind of gift comes with a fake passport? What kind of gift needs a shell company in Panama? And what kind of gift leaves at least 2 other women stripped of their retirement funds? The jury whispered among themselves. Some faces were already leaning toward conviction. The defense attorney turned to Travis. Do you want to explain? Travis stood, wearing that familiar, confident grin. I just loved the wrong person. I was betrayed by the one I trusted most. Natalie is fabricating stories to escape the marriage. Natalie sprang up, her voice thundering across the courtroom. No, I don't need to fabricate anything. You fabricated an entire life, and I just tore off the mask. The judge hammered his gavel. Order, prosecution, call your next witness. The back doors opened. Vanessa Collins entered. Still in her tight red dress, her high heels tapped a cold rhythm across the wooden floor. The courtroom buzzed. The mistress from the shadows was now dragged into the light. Travis jerked his cuffs, eyes blazing. Vanessa, don't say a word. The judge frowned. Défendant silence. Vanessa lifted her chin, lips pressed tight, but her trembling hands betrayed her. The prosecutor stepped forward, voice like a whip. Miss Vanessa Collins, do you recognize the fake passport under the name Jonathan Pierce? Vanessa swallowed hard. I only accompanied Travis on a few business trips. I didn't know. The prosecutor snapped her fingers. Lauren walked in, holding up the mini storage lease. Co-signature, Travis Monroe and Vanessa Collins. Is this your signature? Vanessa paled, stepping back. That, he forced me. Natalie shot up, her voice blazing. He didn't have to force you. You smiled at him in my wedding photo. You were complicit from day one. The courtroom erupted. Reporters scribbled furiously. Vanessa tried to lift her head high, but her voice cracked. I just thought he would leave her and start over with me. I didn't know he planned to take everything. David slammed the file down. Didn't know? Then why did your account receive $45,000 from Suncrest Holdings LLC, a shell company run by Travis? Vanessa collapsed into the witness chair, her face crumbling completely. The prosecutor turned to the jury, voice decisive. This isn't just Travis Monroe. This was a conspiracy, and you are witnessing the accomplice unmasking herself. Natalie whispered, just loud enough for me to hear. I wasn't only confronting Travis. I've ripped the mask off the entire world around him. I nodded, my eyes burning bright. Exactly. And justice is standing with you. The tension in the courtroom reached its peak. Vanessa hunched in the witness chair, her heavy makeup unable to hide her pale face. Reporters snapped photos nonstop, flashes crackling like justice striking with every beat. Travis thrashed, his face contorted. "You've got nothing, just forged papers. Vanessa, tell them I'm innocent." Vanessa shook, her voice breaking. "Travis, you promised me. You promised we'd start over in Grand Cayman. You said the money was yours." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. The prosecutor seized the moment. "So you admit," he promised. "He transferred funds, he invited you into the scheme, and you knew the source was unlawful." Vanessa buried her face in her hands. That half-confession rang across the chamber irreversible. Travis roared, like a beast cornered. "This is a setup. Natalie fabricated everything. David and all of you are jealous, trying to ruin me." Judge William Harper hammered the gavel 3 times, voice stern. "Defendant Monroe, you will not turn this courtroom into your stage. This is federal court." Panting, eyes bloodshot, Travis turned toward Natalie, hissing through clenched teeth. "You'll pay. You think you've won? I'll find a way. I always do." Natalie rose, eyes flashing, answering without fear. "No, this time your only way is behind bars." The jury murmured. No one saw him as charming anymore, only as a criminal, stripped bare before the world. 4 days of arguments, evidence, and witnesses had piled into a mountain. When the jury retired to deliberate, the entire courtroom sank into attention like waiting for a storm. 2 hours later, they returned. The foreman stood, voice ringing. On the charge of interstate fraud, guilty. On the charge of signature forgery, guilty. On the charge of grand theft, guilty. On the charge of coercive control, guilty. Natalie burst into tears, but not tears of despair. They were tears of release. I gripped her hand tightly, whispering, "You've taken your voice back." Travis collapsed into his chair, face drained of color. His arrogant smirk had vanished, replaced by a hollow stare. Vanessa kept her head bowed, unable to lift her eyes. Judge William Harper struck the gavel. The court orders defendant Travis Monroe to be remanded until official sentencing. Bail denied. The clang of handcuffs echoed as they snapped shut again. Travis was hauled out amid the endless flicker of cameras. A chapter of deceit closed. Natalie leaned on my shoulder, whispering, "I thought I would die in that cage, but today I've come back to life." I held her close, eyes lifted toward the bench. Justice doesn't erase pain overnight, but it builds a wall so predators can never reach their claws through again. Sentencing day. The federal courtroom overflowed. Reporters filled the back rows, television cameras broadcasting live. Everyone waited for the final curtain to fall on the man who once lived under the mask of a perfect gentleman. Travis Monroe was escorted in wearing the orange prison uniform. His hair was disheveled, dark circles carved under his eyes from sleepless nights. He tried to hold his head high, feigning composure, but his restless eyes betrayed his panic. For the first time, there was no audience left for him to manipulate. Judge William Harper struck the gavel, his voice firm. Defendant Travis Monroe, also known as Jonathan Pierce, has been found guilty on multiple charges. Before sentencing, does the defendant wish to speak? Travis stood, his voice raspy. "Your Honor, I admit I made mistakes, but I cooperated with investigators, revealed hidden accounts. I ask for leniency. I still have a chance to make things right." A bitter laugh escaped from the victim's bench. Natalie rose, her voice cutting through the chamber. "You're not remorseful. You only regret being caught. Justice is not a commodity to bargain with." The courtroom stilled. Judge Harper nodded, his eyes cold. After reviewing the files, evidence, and the systematic nature of the crimes, this court sentences Travis Monroe to 27 years in prison, with no parole before 20 years. In addition, the defendant must pay restitution totaling $3.7 million to the victims and is permanently barred from any financial activity. The gavel slammed down. A collective exhale surged through the room, mingled with muffled sobs. Natalie collapsed against my shoulder, her tears hot but free. Travis screamed as deputies pulled him away. You'll all regret this. I'll be back. I stared him down, my voice like steel. From now on, you exist only as an inmate number. The echo of clashing cuffs rang out, closing the era of deception. After the trial, Natalie returned to the house once haunted by Travis. But this time, she was no longer a prisoner of memory. She came back as a survivor, ready to rebuild. On the first morning, she flung the curtains wide, letting sunlight flood in. She threw away old remnants. The bedroom walls were repainted white. The bed that had trapped her through nights of gaslighting was replaced by a simple wooden frame with crisp white sheets. On the dresser, only one photo remained: her father, Richard Carter, the one man who had never betrayed her. In the kitchen, Natalie lit a candle scented with licorice, whispering, "This is the new beginning." An invitation arrived from her former media company, but she declined. Instead of returning to old work, Natalie launched a new project: Caution Signs. Slogan: Spot it, stop it. Marina Torres invited her to co-build a financial education program for women. Sophia Leclerc asked her to join weekend legal classes. Natalie accepted, drafting the plan for her first workshop. On opening day, her hands trembled as she stepped onto the stage. An older woman asked, "What if I already gave him my password?" Natalie smiled, her voice steady. "You didn't hand over your heart. You only handed over a string of characters, and that you can take back." Applause thundered. For the first time, Natalie heard clapping for herself, not for the fraud who once stood beside her. She wrote in her journal, "I no longer want to be the victim in someone else's story. I want to be the woman who makes predators like Pierce tremble before they dare deceive again." On her living room wall, she hung a canvas inscribed, "Restore, heal, rise." On the porch, a new wind chime jingled with every breeze, reminding her of the gavel's echo that once thundered. When I placed a new house key in her hand, I said, "From now on, no one enters this home unless you allow it." Natalie smiled, pride glowing in her eyes. "This is no longer a prison of memories. This is my home." 6 months after that fateful night, when Natalie knocked on my door at 2 a.m., from the ashes of tragedy, a movement had taken shape. In the glittering hall of the Biltmore Hotel, chandeliers blazed, reflecting on tables draped in white, accented with blue ribbons. On the grand backdrop, silver letters gleamed: Trust Anew Foundation, First Annual Gala. Natalie walked onto the stage in a deep red gown, her posture upright, eyes radiant. She began with words that silenced the entire room. 6 months ago, I knocked on my mother's door at 2 a.m., empty-handed, heart shattered. Today, I stand here not to recount loss, but to speak of how we reclaim trust. Behind her, the screen displayed numbers: 13 cities, 14,300 reached, 29 victims directly assisted. A short video played, showing thanks from women once rescued. Many in the audience wiped their tears. Natalie unveiled a new initiative: the Financial Shield program, training banks and communities to detect financial abuse early. Marina presented the Recovery Community Centers, while Sophia spoke of legal aid. 3 voices blended into a triangle of justice: law, community, education. During the fundraising auction, one of the luxury watches once seized from Pierce was offered. A collector bid high, transforming the symbol of deception into a resource for rescue. Applause roared. The district prosecutor announced an official partnership with Trust Anew on financial fraud prevention. A major bank executive declared the launch of Alert Early, a system to flag suspicious transactions targeting elderly clients. Natalie closed with words etched into every heart. Trust is not something given to you. Trust is something you rebuild, piece by piece. And we will stand beside you in that journey. As she finished, the screen behind her flashed red. The Trust Anew hotline had just received a live distress call right in the middle of the gala. The entire room rose to its feet, clapping endlessly. An elderly woman stepped forward, grasped Natalie's hand, choking back tears. "You saved me from losing my home. Thank you." Natalie smiled, and this time no tears fell. Only a nod, proud and unshaken. 3 years after the historic trial that ended Jonathan Pierce's freedom, the city of Miami became the nation's focal point. Inside the National Convention Center, a massive banner hung high, Financial Exploitation and Vulnerable Protection Summit, hosted by Anew and U.S. Department of Justice. The entrance hallway was lined with portraits of survivors. Each photo carried only one caption: "I survived." Natalie, Marina Torres, and Sophia Leclerc walked that hall preparing for their keynote address. They were no longer women deceived by Pierce. They were symbols of resilience, voices shaping national policy. I sat toward the back row, feeling my role fade. In just 2 weeks, I would officially retire after more than 30 years in law enforcement. But as I watched my daughter leading this movement, I knew my work had never truly ended. Natalie began, her voice resonant. "Fraudsters like Pierce don't just take money. They steal something more valuable: trust." Applause thundered, but she lifted her hand for silence. "Listen to a story." She told of a 77-year-old widow in Houston who called the Anew hotline after realizing her so-called financial advisor was repeating Travis's exact words. That call sparked an investigation, dismantling a multi-million-dollar ring and rescuing at least 16 more victims. On the screen appeared a slide: "Workshop Hotline Investigation Indictment." The hall erupted in a standing ovation, the first of the day. Sophia unveiled a national free-access legal toolkit for victims. Marina revealed a U.S. map. 15 states already had support centers, with a goal to reach 30 in the next year. A Department of Justice representative signed a memorandum of cooperation with Anew right on stage, pledging nationwide frontline training for detecting financial abuse. A major bank announced its stop-and-check program for high-risk senior transactions. Before leaving the stage, Natalie turned to me and whispered, "Mom, I still remember that night, 2 a.m., when I knocked on our door." I squeezed her hand, answering, "The worst night opened your mission, and today, the entire nation is listening." That day, headlines blazed. Anew movement reshapes national banking policies. Late that night, our group gathered again at the familiar courthouse cafe. Marina raised her glass. "Who would have thought a tragedy could change the whole system?" Sophia smiled. "And this is only the beginning." I looked at the 3 women before me, once broken by the same man, now forged into a steel triangle. Friends, allies, warriors. Natalie opened her phone. The map of the U.S. lit up with new green dots. She lifted her head, her voice strong. "Pierce doesn't define us. Stopping predators like him, that's what defines us." In all my years, I had interrogated thousands of criminals, but none left a scar on me like the case of Travis Monroe, Jonathan Pierce. Now, in retirement, I finally understood. Justice is not only in verdicts, it lives in the seeds we plant for the next generation. Natalie persuaded me to take on a new role: senior advisor at the Anew Foundation. The new business card on my desk read, "Senior Advisor, Legal and Community Outreach." Not about power anymore, but about the voice of experience. On my first day, I sat with Natalie, Marina, and Sophia in a sunlit conference room. Natalie wrote 3 words on the board: sustain, maintain the hotline and community network; scale, expand nationwide; secure, protect the financial system with stronger laws. I looked at these 3 women, once broken by the same predator, now planning strategies for an entire country, and I realized they were doing the work the system once overlooked. As advisor, I joined training sessions, telling real cases so the younger generation would know a single forged signature can destroy a life. I attended congressional hearings, working with senators to draft a new bill, the Pierce Act, requiring banks to report any signs of financial control within marriage. On the eve of the 3rd anniversary of Anew, Natalie came to my house. We sat again at the old kitchen table, where 4 years ago she had collapsed in tears. But this time, she sat upright, eyes steady. "Mom," Natalie said softly but firmly, "that night, I knocked for rescue. Today, I knocked to thank you. You didn't let me drown, and because of that, I can pull so many others from the dark." I gripped her hand. In that moment, I saw the circle close, from one desperate knock at 2 a.m. to a movement that shook a nation. And I understood. Retirement is not an ending. It is simply another word for passing the torch. 6 years have passed since that night when Natalie knocked on my door at 2 a.m. From a desperate woman, she has become the National Executive Director of the Trust Anew Foundation, an organization now present in more than 40 states, in partnership with the Department of Justice, major banks, and leading universities. In the last year alone, they have supported more than 45,000 victims and trained over 110,000 frontline workers to recognize financial abuse. Marina Torres leads the community centers. Sophia Leclerc has become a lawyer defending victims in court. As for me, I continue serving as advisor, telling stories to remind the next generation. Call abuse by its name. Never let silence become the sentence. The day Natalie stepped onto the stage at the international conference in Washington, D.C., the lights shone bright, and she declared, "Pierce thought he had finished writing our story, but the truth is, we took the pen back, and we are writing a new chapter for everyone." The hall rose in thunderous applause. I looked at my daughter, knowing that from personal pain, a collective legacy had been born. If you have ever experienced or witnessed financial abuse, speak up. One phone call, one shared word can save a life. Never carry the burden of shame. Shame belongs to the abuser, not to you. Share this story so more people can be warned. And if you believe that trust can be rebuilt, leave a comment. I believe. Subscribe, like, and share so you won't miss the next stories where justice and truth always find their voice.